Hi class, this is Professor Koji, Management 360, and this week's lectures is on Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. So let's get started. So Chapter 9 is diverse teams in virtual teams, managing differences and distances. First is section understanding and managing diverse teams. So diverse teams break down or break through. Forming a cohesive team from relatively similar individuals is hard enough. The difficulties are multiplied when team members come from different ethnic or national cultures. They not only come to the group with their own individual ways of being, but they also bring cultural or national dictates about the proper ways to do things. As a consequence, diverse teams require more skillful facilitation than homogeneous groups, especially in the early stages. We had a lecture and chapters on this already. And so you kind of can refer back to that. And also there was a separate chapter on it as well. However, when it comes to the diverse teams, and especially with this week's or Chapter 9's topic, it could become even more challenging as well. So we'll go through kind of various ways to handle those challenges throughout this presentation, but you have to consider that not only, especially these days and times we're in, not only is it difficult for team cohesion, but it's also difficult, more difficult with the amount of stay-at-home work and remote working that people are doing, and trying to collaborate with each other as well in that process. That becomes even more challenging when you're working with teams across the world, and there's different time zones and a bunch of other competing challenges that you have to overcome. But like it says, diversity is a key component to that. So what is diversity? Social categorizations, dividing people into social categories that people view as relevant. Perspective and style, the different perspectives and approaches to work that team members bring to the group. And power, the dynamics and barriers that result from the power structure in a team, organization, or society. Diversity among team member influences a variety of cognitive resources and behavioral styles in that team, interaction processes by which team members work together, including both task and relationship processes. And people are going to have their own ways of doing things, and that's a good thing and a bad thing if it's not controlled. Team's ability to be a high-performing team, the ability to make effective decisions, promote the well-being and growth of members, and enhance the ability to perform as an effective unit. And this really only comes about if you have cohesion, if you are on the same page, if you're understanding the same goals, if your moral compasses are the same, that you feel safe and protected within your team itself, within the organization you are in, and you have a good environment to work. Potential advantages of diverse teams is the enhanced effectiveness of intellective tasks, enhanced effectiveness on creative and judgmental decision making. And again, if you have multiple perspectives, if there's people come from in different environments and different situations, they're bringing just an extreme wealth of experience and knowledge. And not everyone is going to know everything. That's why it's important to have differing minds come together to fill in some of the gaps and some of the blind spots that everyone has, so that you're making the best decisions as possible. Again, potential advantages of diverse teams: broader, more diverse external networks. That's a really good one right there, in the sense that the more diverse your team is, the broader the networks they're going to have, in the sense that if I come from let's just say a technical background, and I know people in that space, and we need tech support. Right there, you're gaining a whole bunch of new resources as well. So diversification of a team in various aspects really proves fruitful. Enhanced learning, continuous improvement because you're learning from others, and the diversity dilemma, right? Greater variety of perspectives, information, skills, relationship networks, and behavioral styles to their teams leads to high quality decision, enhanced performance. Greater risk of dysfunctional dynamics, including cultural ignorance and bias, marginalization, and ability of team members to identify with teams, leads to psychological detachment, less cohesion, communication problems, social conflict, increased absenteeism, and people just leaving. So if people, and this is kind of the thing too, and it's not just black and white, right? You're not going to have a well-oiled machine team and a team that's completely dysfunctional and falling apart. There's various shades of gray here. And it's important that, especially when you're forming a new team, and that's regardless how diverse it is, just you're forming any type of team. Just think about any sports teams you're on, if you're in orchestras, or if you're in a work group, or whatever it might be, or even in a classroom setting when you're put into a small group to work on a project. There needs to be a level of understanding and how the group is going to operate and what the moral compass is. And some of those things can be implied, and some of those things maybe not. I think in a school setting, when you're plugged in with a team, you're of a like-minded group of people. You're all there because you want to be. You're all there at the same school. You're all in the same class. You're all aiming for the same goals. In the working world, that doesn't necessarily happen. Your team's goals might be different than another team's goals. Your environment, meaning that your personal team or personal organization's culture is terrible, and you're bringing that dysfunction in. So that requires a little bit more hand holding, and that's why you usually have team leads. Team leads are the ones that are going to ensure that everyone's working together and that you're working out any issues. You're setting upfront guidelines and group rules generally, so people can start to get in line with that. If you can't trust people, if you can't rely on them to have your back, if you can't get their support, if you're always butting heads, it's not a good atmosphere for those individuals to produce the best work. Potential disadvantages, blah, 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 blah. Potential disadvantages of diverse teams. I really can't talk today. More stress. If you're dealing with one type of person or whatever it might be, then having other types of people come into your circle may give you some anxiety. You may be uncertain, and this causes stress. Reduced group cohesion. Again, you may not know how to best integrate everyone into the team, into the conversation. You may just fall back on talking or dealing with only like-minded people, and you're missing out on potential great opportunities for better ideas through group cohesion, but you're not getting it because you're staying with the ones you know or whatever. More psychological and physical detachment from teams. Again, if you don't look like me or I don't look like you, that may cause some issues if you're not open, if both the members are not open to working together, regardless of who you are, and that could cause some detachment. Decreased and more distorted internal communication, more difficulty coordinating, kind of for the reasons I just stated, more perceptual biases of leaders, especially when if you have a certain group of people, let's say you have two separate groups of people in a one team, and that leader is of the same race or of the same like-mindedness or whatever it might be, or even if that person comes from the same company that was just acquired by another company, and there may be a sense of them versus us, and there may be a bias towards that leader that this leader is really favoring their side, and I quote their, in quotes, their side, right? That could happen. And misperceptions about team performance. Who did what? Who did more of what? Who contributed more? All that could take effect. So additional factors to consider is relevance of diversity to the task. Does diversity even matter? Usually not. When it comes to a task, the only really diversity from a task is just kind of your background and your knowledge and experience, and if you're better fit to handle something. Relevance of diversity to team members, differential impact of diversity on team members, impact of organizational culture. And that's a good one too, because if your culture is not open, is not diversified, does not talk about diversity, does not offer cultural classes, doesn't do those things that really makes the whole organization cohesive, that could really, and it will, impact the smaller teams within an organization. Impact of time. This is an interesting as well. Different parts of the country, you may or may not know this, they view time differently. I think in the European nations, countries, they're more lackadaisical when it comes to time. And don't quote me on that, but that's what I think. And in America, obviously, we know that time is of the essence, and we don't have enough time. We're busy, we're rushing. There's always a sense of urgency, and our attention spans are that of a fly. So time is very interesting when it comes to the different cultures, because they view time differently and they value time differently. And effectiveness of team leadership. Quality of team leadership determines whether a diverse team leverages or wastes its resources and its potential for outperforming homogeneous teams. I kind of touched upon that before, but I mentioned just as a team lead or team leader, it's important that that person is rallying everyone around the common cause and common goal. A lot of times there's just a misalignment of what the expectations are of the project, or how do you define success. And it's important that that's outlaid in the beginning so everyone understands it. Jumpstart your diverse team. Create a common identity and a collectivist culture. It's not uncommon for a new team, especially a team that's going to be together for a while, whether that's a stable org team where you're going to be with each other forever until someone leaves, or if it's going to be a short-term group. Short-term, we'll say a more longer-term group, maybe close to a year, where you're going to be working on project together. It's not a bad idea to come up with some values. Have the team come up with values for that smaller team that everyone uses a North Star, or just as a guidepost or a lighthouse, if you will, where if people start to lose their way, they can refer back to that, hold each other accountable, hold themselves accountable if they're going off the path. Create a value and diversity perspective. Be clear you want to leverage what you want to leverage the different resources team members bring to find better ways of achieving goals. Differences in how things are done, differences just in the people you have, is such an incredible asset, because everyone brings their own flavor, their own background, their own experiences, their own education. And those things should be leveraged and used as in leveraging people's talents for sure. Recruit team members who are high on need for cognition and openness to experience. That's great because you have more open-minded people. Pay particular attention to first meetings. So the old adage that it's important to make that first impression, right? And if you don't make a good first impression, it's very difficult to overcome that. It comes with time and trust, but if you're not making that great first impression, if that first meeting doesn't go well, if people are confused, if people if you didn't give a team leader didn't give clarity, if you as a manager didn't give clarity on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, why they're there, why were those people chosen from the group, you want to be really cognizant of that first meeting and making sure it's being started on the right foot. So continuing the Jumpstart Diversity, pay extra attention to team norms and processes. Provide early opportunities to succeed, clear performance measures, and ongoing positive feedback. It just goes back to being open and transparent with what needs to be accomplished. How do you gauge success? What are the goals of the project? And maybe in defining some of the team roles as well, which is important. Role model the behavior you want to see in the team members. I think that comes without question. Pay attention to the context in which the team works. How do they work? Is it completely remote? Do they have meetings? Are there some people in the office who have meetings and only a few are on the call? That creates separation. I had a manager a few years back where for his own team, if you were not all in the office at that time to have a team meeting, he would not do the split, meaning half the team's in a conference room with him and half the team's on the phone. If not everyone was in the office to have the team meeting, everyone would dial in, even if you're in the next cubicle from your teammate, because he knew that the difference in person having a meeting and having people on the phone creates a large separation, and it isolates people. So that's an interesting tip. Not everyone does that. I'm not saying that you should, but that goes back to the emotional intelligence that you have, that you can bring to the table, of understanding and being sympathetic or empathetic to those that are not in the room. Let's see what we got here. Did I do the last one? Yeah. Questions for building common ground in diverse teams. In what ways are team members similar and different? And there's a lot of games. You could Google this as far as icebreakers or things like that. And people have more in common than you may think. It could be sports teams. It could be charity events. It could be how many kids you have. It could be the schools the kids went to. It could be the vacations you've gone, or the places you've gone to. People gravitate to people that are the same or similar. If you create build up the knowledge of the people that are there, and you kind of foster the similarities, that's a good way to do it. Is get people to talk about what they've done, and where they've gone, what they want to accomplish, what their hobbies are. Then you start to create the synergy among the team. What are potential strengths and weaknesses? Pretty straightforward. What are some team dynamics we need to avoid? And this is just having an open dialogue, having a trusting open dialogue. People may say that you may even have a list, okay, or even have people anonymously before the meeting. You say, look, I'm trying to understand what people's pet peeves are. And then have people submit them anonymously and just list them in the meeting, and they can discuss it. So someone may say, I hate when people are late for meetings. And and you can't accommodate everyone, but let's just say 90% of the team says something, and let's just say it's being late to a meeting. Then maybe start your meetings instead of at 10 a.m., start them at 10:05 a.m., where people can get off their previous call, can use the restroom, can grab a coffee, but be there, and everyone starts on time, as an example. You need to overcome them. You need to understand what those are, and you can't understand what people are thinking, so you have to ask them, and then you have to put a plan together to address it. How can we work together so that we leverage our strengths? Now, what norms can we establish to help us leverage our strengths and minimize potential weaknesses? Can touch upon that. Managing virtual teams, and of course this is very prevalent today, and it's very widespread, so this is important. So technology and teams. Technology can help put us in contact with each other over oceans and over cultures, but it cannot make us understand one another. For that, we must still depend on the oldest systems of all: human imagination, tolerance, determination, and the will to learn continuously. Very good quote. Understanding dynamics in distributed virtual teams. What is a distributed team? A distributed team tends to be geographically dispersed, rarely meets face-to-face, and primarily depends on electronic and computer-based information and communication. Oops. Sorry. Let me just start again. A distributed team tends to be geographically dispersed, rarely meets face-to-face, and primarily depends on electronic and computer-based information and communication technologies to work together. Folks, this is the world we live in today. And I know that more offices, more businesses, restaurants are opening. But even before the COVID pandemic, there was a lot more remote working. It promotes, and generally it promotes a better work-life balance. People are closer to their families, a lot of great benefits. But from the pandemic, it obviously was very widespread. Virtual teams differ from face-to-face teams because communication is primarily through computer-mediated information and communication technologies. They're able to be more flexible. Schedules can be set by dates and milestones, not availability of team members. They're able to have more fluid team membership as well. I would say also it's important from the face-to-face perspective in the virtual teams is that it's because you're just not there to see the other person. The nonverbal's not there. So in that circumstance, that's a huge differentiation that you're not able to play upon the facial expressions or read the room. Virtual teams differ from face-to-face. Virtual teams differ from face-to-face teams because communication is primarily through computer media information. I just said this, didn't I? I do look at. So why virtual teams? Why do them? Availability of technologies, global expansion. Obviously, if you're not using technology, you can't really. You're only relegated to the people that are around you, that are in your office or in your state or whatever. A shift from production to knowledge work, access to consultants and experts, e-commerce, access to most talented employees, access to most talented employees. If you're based out of Connecticut and you can get an A player out of California, without technology, without virtual teams, you can't land that person, right? Even if that person loves your company, wants to work for you, if you're not able to allow for the virtual team, allow for remote work, then it's impossible to get that person without having them move to Connecticut, and they may not want to do that, right? And a lot of people won't tolerate that anymore because there's the remote working. Make the best use of limited office space. And that's a good one too, is you can really save money as a company if you're using remote work. Environmental advantages, meaning that you're not using your car, for example, can help teams become more flexible and faster. That's true, and that's true and false. Another shade of gray item there. It is true that you can be flexible and faster, but what tends to happen is that, well, if Sally Ann is more flexible and faster, then I can give her more work. So instead of 6 projects, I'll give her 8 because she's flexible and faster. And it may not sit well with people that you're taking an advantage of it. But you have to really balance that out. Potential advantages of distributed teams: speed, flexibility, resource availability, can handle increased group size. Pretty straightforward there. There's also potential problems with distributed teams. So communication problems. If people are not responding to your emails or your instant messages, it's a lot tougher to ignore someone when I'm looking at you in your face and asking you a question. You're not going to ignore me, but you could ignore my email. You could ignore my same time message or instant messenger. Coordination problems. Relationship problems due to lack of familiarity and politeness norms. they say that especially Facebook or blogs or people commenting on YouTube videos, people are harsh because there's no one to hold them accountable, or no one. And these people would never say this stuff in person, so you lose kind of that politeness norm. Technology-related problems as well. You got a blue screen, or your internet went down. There's a lot of other things that could happen that could impede progress, could impede productivity and communication. Managing communication in virtual teams. So psychological safety, refer to an employee's sense of being able to show and employs oneself without negative consequences to self-image, status, or career, and a shared belief in a team that it is safe to take interpersonal risks. So psychological safety is very important. Team members who feel psychologically safe tend to be less self-conscious, trust each other more, speak up more, share information more often across hierarchical and functional boundaries, support each other more, value all team members, diverse perspectives, talents, avoid negative stereotypes, reduce in-group, out-of-group conflict, ask for help when needed, admit error, raise difficult issues, engage in quick, informal, and spontaneous face-to-face and email communication, request feedback, take more initiative, challenge current taken for granted practices, be more creative, take more risk, and experiment more. That was a long list. To build psychological safety in virtual teams, you try these things. You can highlight the value of each team member's unique perspectives and talents. I am recording something. What? No, I can't. When I'm done. Quiet. Let's start again here. So to build psychological safety in virtual teams, highlight the value of each team member's unique perspectives and talents early, encourage participation and active listening from all team members, encourage team members to connect to, build relationships with, and ask questions to outside people and teams, and encourage risk-taking and learning from experience. So those are all ways to help build the psychological safety in a virtual team. Remember, when I think of virtual teams in the best light, I think of teams of people who are as comfortable with each other as they are with a wide variety of communication and computing technologies. When they meet virtually, they take advantage of all their technical know-how to continue their work. And when they meet face-to-face, they use the same technology to develop, organize, and refine their understanding. They have an emotional bandwidth that is as broad as their communication bandwidth, so that no matter how or where they meet, they relate to each other with humor, understanding, and respect. So that's the end of chapter 9, moving into chapter 10, crafting a life, your guide to the good life. This is an interesting section, actually. I have realized that life is definitely not a straight line getting from point A to B, but a series of detours. What you make of these detours determines your destiny. Great quote. You want to know what A and B is, but you have to always consider in the back of your mind that it will be a squiggly, circly line to get from A to B. And a lot of people, if you're going to start a business or do anything, write a book, go to nursing school, go to graduate school, whatever it might, wherever your journey takes you, just know that there's going to be challenges. There's going to be moments of extreme heartache in that process. So when I was starting my business, my delivery business, there were many challenges or many hurdles that had me thinking that I was going to quit. And there's a few times that happened, and it really tests your resolve. But the one thing that you should keep in the back of your mind that is very important for, let's just say, an entrepreneur, is perseverance. Perseverance meaning that no matter what the challenge is, you take it on, you take it head on, and you do everything that you can, everything possible to overcome it, and then you move forward. So perseverance in entrepreneurship, among other things, is very important. Happiness, we like that. So what is happiness? Researchers refer to happiness as subjective well-being. Subjective well-being reflects a preponderance of positive thoughts and feelings about one's life. Another key thing, I'm not sure if I have this in here, but money does not make you happy. And that's important to know, because if you're miserable today and you win the lottery tomorrow, next week you'll be miserable again, because money doesn't do much for you. It will give you some security, but that's all it does. It can't help you build meaningful relationships. It can't get you into the NBA. There's just something. It can't make you a better driver, or whatever it might be. It can't help you do the things that you want to be personally. It can't help you grow psychologically and grow in strength mentally and intellectually. I suppose it could buy you some schooling, but still, you can go to school without money. You don't need it. Meaning, there's always grants, there's always loans. That's what I mean by that. Of course, you need money to pay for it, but money does not make you happy. Happiness is the overall feeling of pleasure and meaning. That's just a quote. So the subjective well-being, those who experience subjective well-being are pleased with themselves, are pleased with their work, are pleased with personal relationships, tend to feel primarily pleasant emotions. And I guess that was it. You're content with the things that you experience. You can't experience money. It's just something that you have and you can use it. But, as I say, money can't buy happiness, or long-term happiness anyway. There you go. I like that. Does money buy happiness? And this is actually an important distinction. So does money buy happiness? It doesn't if it's spent on, a treadmill. It's like you put anything in their car or whatever, rather tangible item. So no, if it's spent on things that increase your stress. No, if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, meaning that if you're trying to be like someone else, and you keep spending money to try to be like them, you will never be like them because you're unique and different. You have unique talents and skills, and just everything is different. You cannot, even if you buy everything that they have, that still won't give you the satisfaction of being like another person, because their motivations, what makes them happy, are different from yours. So does money buy happiness? Yes, if it's spent on experiences. So no, if you spend it on things. Yes, if you spend it on experiences. I just mentioned that before, is that experiences, relationships, those are the things that make you happy, that provide fulfillment in your life. So you invest in relationships when you invest in experiences. So if you go to Hawaii, or you go to Portugal, you go to Australia, you are investing in experiences there. It's more enriching to your life. If you invest in challenges, and if you invest in your health, which is very important, obviously. What makes people happy? And on the left here, it says, does it make people happy? And on the right-hand side, does make people happy. And I don't know why there's so many bullet points everywhere. It's kind of annoying, but bear with me on that. So what doesn't make people happy? Drive for money, unless one is poor, especially if motivated by social comparison, seeking power, showing off, and overcoming self-doubt. If you ever seen a dog chasing its tail, if you haven't, check on YouTube, but you can visualize it, obviously. That's what this is when you think that obtaining more wealth, and wealth I mean money, when you're trying to get more money because you're in this comparison mode, and you'll never find fulfillment. And fulfillment is happiness. That's why when you get married or have kids, or you help other people, that's another huge thing. When you're helping other people, the fulfillment on the happiness on their faces, the knowledge that you help them, that what makes people happy. That fulfills you. These things will never fulfill you, driving to find these things. And being materialistic as well, or materialism as they have it here. You can never buy enough Nikes or buy enough Prada bags to make you feel happy, because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of leather. And the other side of the coin is what does make people happy? Personal growth. So again, investing in yourself, investing in your education. You gain fulfillment by the knowledge. Close personal relationships. You have best friends. Those things make you happy. Your relationship with your brothers and sisters, relationships with a spouse, with your children, with your mother and father, with your grandparents, with your guardians, whatever it might be. Those provide great enriching experiences. Making a social contribution, I just mentioned about giving back. It really, when you give back, it's an incredible feeling. The thought of expending time is a little daunting, and you're like, I'm not doing that. But if you're ever in a situation where you can help someone, even if it's not like a 4-hour ordeal. I remember when we were coming home from our town where we live, and someone stalled right in the middle of the road. There's a 4-way intersection, and they got out there trying to push the car, and they couldn't. I had my family with me. I merely pulled over and helped them. And I helped that person push their car, and someone else actually came and helped to push their car to a safe place. And they were so appreciative of it. And it made me feel good to do that. And when you are helping others succeed at something, or helping others get out of harm's way, or helping other people get healthy, or whatever it might be, that's one of the best feelings you'll get. So selfishly, I'll tell you that helping others makes you feel great. So if you're looking to feel good, if you're down about your own situation, go to a soup kitchen, or go somewhere where there's the homeless, or hospital. help those people out. And not only will you feel good about yourself at the end of the journey, but you would have helped others as well. And you'll realize and become humbled that your situation is not bad at all. Also, maintaining one's health, which you mentioned before. This is pretty good. Your learning experience here. Approximately 1/3 of all homes in 1940 did not have running water, indoor toilets, or bathtub showers, and more than half had no central heating. If you were 25 years old or older in 1940, you would have stood only a 40% chance of having completed the 8th grade, a 25% chance of having graduated from high school, and only a 5% chance of having finished college. When asked to rate their overall satisfaction with life, Americans in 1940 reported being, quote, very happy with an average score of 7.5 out of 10. However, times have changed. The typical house today not only has running water, 2 or more baths, and central heating, but has twice the size with an average of 2 rooms per person, not to mention being equipped with microwave ovens, dishwashers, color TVs, DVD players, iPods, and personal computers. And real monthly personal income has more than doubled. So, what is the average score for Americans today? It's 7.2, which is going down. So think about that and think about why that is. Why do you think now that number has gone down? It's very interesting. You could probably make and that's the very how happy you are. And that could be the increase in cyberbullying. It could be how envious you are of people on Instagram, but yet their lives could suck, and then you're just seeing only the best of them, their best selves. Not even the best selves, they're a mirage of themselves, right? So there's a bunch of different things. The news being more biased than ever, right? And that could bring you down. There's tons of stuff that technology, although in some areas may make your lives better, in others it could really make you miserable. Miswanting. Researchers Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson tend to label the misguided but common belief that money and material possessions will make us happy as miswanting. They explain that human beings tend to overestimate how much happiness these things will bring up because we assume the momentary, I think probably the monetary, that's probably spelled wrong, pleasure will lead to lasting pleasure. Gilbert and Wilson found that human beings tend to overestimate how much unhappiness one-time negative events like losing a job will bring because most people tend to adjust these losses in a relatively short time and adapt to our lives to accommodate them. If we are aware that we tend to overestimate the impact of both positive and negative events on our long-term happiness, we can make better decisions in how we spend our time, energy, and money in our day-to-day lives, both for short and long-term planning. It's very interesting and it's true because we think that the negative things in our lives will last forever, but they don't. You overcome them. And I remember a story. I remember getting my my MacBook Pro, and it was the first Mac I ever got. And I remember it was exciting. Obviously, Apple has an incredible branding strategy and it almost a cult-like following. I remember I had it in front of me and it came in the mail actually, and it was in its beautiful box and it was wrapped, had the cellophane around it. And before I opened it, I put it down on my tray and I literally said this to myself. What I said to myself was, it will never be, my experience and happiness and the joy will never be as great as it is right this moment. And right that moment is having it there, the anticipation, being overly optimistic of what this product could do. And I remember that feeling. And when I opened it up and I went through it and the excitement wore off, right? It's never going to last forever. Material things don't last forever. If you're a little bit older and you have kids, or when you have kids, your children's possessions are only are only desired, uncontrollably desired at the time. When you buy them something the next day, daddy, I need to have that or my life will end. They don't even know where it is. Where's that toy we got yesterday? I don't know. So, but that's just how life is. That's why Apple's and Samsung, that's why people buy new phones every year. You buy these $1,000 phones because it's the best thing, but it's depressing because 8 to 12 months later, there's going to be a new one with more cameras on the back. We're going to end up with 50 camera holes in the back of our phone soon. It will never, those things, the happiness wears off. But on the opposite side, tragedies in your life, you losing a job, you getting a C instead of an A on a paper, whatever it might be. We overvalue the negative and undervalue our positives. Predictors of happiness, your beliefs, the choices you make about how to think about your life and what happens in life. And activities, the choices you make about things or activities you do. Activities that make you happy, having goals one enjoys and that are congruent with each other, balancing current and future pleasure, spending time with others, developing effective coping strategies. All this is about building relationships and building your experiences up. You'll see a common theme with all this stuff. Flow, what is flow? So flow is being fully engaged in the activity that you find meaningful, that stretches your abilities, and that leaves you feeling more fulfilled than you were before. If you find a job that gives you this, do not leave it. Or if you're going to leave it to be promoted or continue your career journey. That finding your flow, as they say, is you'll find flow in your hobbies. You tend to do hobbies that you like. I don't know many people who do extracurricular activities with a hobby that you don't like. That wouldn't make sense. That's why time flies so quickly when it comes to doing things you love. And that's why I say, if you find something you love, hang on to it. Do you feel the flow at work? You feel the flow at work when you voluntarily work hard towards something that you feel is meaningful. You feel that time is distorted. Hours seem like minutes, days seem like hours. You're not self-conscious, so you can focus wholeheartedly on the task at hand. So why flow? So people who feel flow at work are more likely to achieve results, less likely to leave the organization, and are happier. That's why it's incredibly important that you match up people's talents, their desires, what gets them charged and motivated, and you align that to tasks and into a job role. Rewards of flow, we feel good. We feel a sense of accomplishment. We gain new skills because we're open to hearing other things and to absorbing new skills. We become ready to take on more challenging tasks. We are motivated to feel flow again. We like that feeling of it, like the feeling of doing what we love and getting accomplishment out of it. We want to do it again. And our identity becomes more complex and stronger. Optimism. Dreams, if they are any good, are always a little crazy. So that's interesting. Technology is new, at least advanced technology, iPhones and iPads and all these different technologies were just dreams where people will say, I think we can do that, and did it. So every innovation once was from a crazy person until they become a billionaire, and then they're not so crazy anymore. Moods and decision-making, both positive and negative moods can help us to make better decisions, depending on the type of problem we are facing. Researchers agree that the way we feel affects the way we think, e.g. how we process the world around us and what we pay attention to. Our memory, e.g. did the person who stole the purse have a beard? Our judgments, is the job candidate a good fit? And actions, should we hire this job candidate or not? They also agree that we make decisions differently depending on whether we're in a good mood or bad mood, even when we're faced with objective facts. And it goes back to, are you in the right, if it's from a career perspective, are you in the right role? Are you on the right team? Are you in a toxic team, toxic environment? Your manager is terrible. Your teammates are idiots. Those things are going to affect your mood and affect your decision making. So that's why putting yourself in a good environment, especially as you manage, putting other people in a good environment, creating the great environment that people want to work in, is vitally important. So moods and decision-making continue. Researcher Joseph Forgas found that negative moods as well as positive moods can help people make better decisions. People who are in a mild bad moods tend to be more attentive to their surroundings and better able to remember the details of what they see, and are less gullible, are more likely to remember, are less likely to make snap decisions, including those based on prejudices, and are better able to identify a line. Although good moods undoubtedly provide significant benefits in many aspects of life, including in decision making, bad moods also play a positive adaptive function by helping us be more attentive and careful when making decisions. If you're too gung-ho, you're maybe able to not be as critical as you should be as a manager. If you're always bubbly and you see the best in people and you're just over the top positive, then that will distort your decision making negatively. Perfectionism. Their goals are so unrealistically high that they cannot possibly succeed. They're constantly frustrated by the need to achieve and their failure to do so. For them, being perfect is the magic formula for success. Even when perfectionists do something successfully, they are seldom able to savor the fruits of their accomplishments. The real tragedy lies in the fact that for the perfectionist, achieving 95% or even 99% of the goal is usually seen as a failure because it's not perfect. Dealing with perfectionists is difficult because they want to get everything correct. And perfection is not good in a way of progress. And they say perfection is the what's the term, or not the term, the phrase. Perfection is the essentially what it is perfection is very detrimental to progress because you are not able to take the next step because you're focused on the current step and making it perfect. Perfectionism does not work in the corporate world. It does not work in entrepreneurship. It will slow you down. You will miss things. You will miss deadlines, and it will end badly. Perfectionism is a problem when it's excessive and uncontrollable. It is rooted in an obsessive desire to fill one's own needs rather than the demands of the situation. It involves excessive ruminations about failures to meet personal social standards. It results in all or none thinking. Perfectionists see performance as perfect or bad with nothing in between, completely black and white. Reducing perfectionism. Do not attach all your self-worth to your performance. A lot of people think that if it's not perfect, then it's a reflection on them personally, when it's really not. Give yourself permission to be imperfect. Set reasonable, achievable goals. Be more discriminating about when orderliness and high standards are critical and when they are not. A lot of tasks are like horseshoes, where if you just get close, then that's good. Some, like accounting, you do need to be precise. And you'll find perfectionists in those types of fields where precision is valued and they are important. Choose some activities you can do without aiming for perfection. Go back to horseshoes, play horseshoes. Just getting close or cornhole for the young folks, getting close can get you wins. And can get you successful. Why executives lose their balance. So to have a job that one truly enjoys is enviable, but it becomes a problem when a person loves the job so much that is all that he or she wants to do, even at the cost of family and health. You know, especially speak from almost personal experiences from an entrepreneurial perspective, it can be. You have to make sacrifices and choices that sometimes don't put your family first. And I hate to admit that, but it's very true. And the whole notion of having a defined work-life balance is just BS. So people who talk about work-life balance like they can slice a pie perfectly is full of crap. And you should listen to their advice with a grain of salt. You should strive to put boundaries and barriers where you can, but if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it's a full-time gig. And I say full-time, I don't mean 40 hours. I mean 24 hours, 7 days a week. you want to carve out time for your family, but realistically, if you're in the throes of starting your company or in the early stages and you haven't delegated a lot of work yet and you can't, you have to make the sacrifice or your company's not going to work. It's just reality. A person pursuing an ideal self-image must maintain the delusion of possessing the qualities of that ideal. But since the ideal itself is an incomplete picture of one's real self, that self-esteem that depends on possessing those qualities is fragile. It's just a never-ending loop of badness. How your job can make you sick and how you can make your employees sick. When you're providing low supervisory support, that one's a little shaky because some people thrive in low supervisory support situations. So it's kind of like micromanaging versus fully hands off, but people do need support and supervision still, but just be sparingly and really ask your employee what level of supervision that they need, or you can determine for yourself based on their performance how much they need. Stress from low control and high demands, perfectionism, feelings of unfairness, overtime, hostility dimension of a type A behavior, and lack of sleep. Lessons for longevity. So how do you keep yourself motivated, focused, energized for the long term? Have good eating habits, have good healthcare habits, stay physically active, engaged. So those three are health-wise, and health is important. Stay intellectually engaged, cope well with stress. Cope well with stress, I don't really like that one, although it's in here, but how do you say cope well with stress? It's almost like saying to a salesperson, hey, do better at sales or do better at your job. So what I mean by that, it's so vague that you don't know what to do with that that advice or that direction. So cope well with stress, what does that mean? But I'll try to define that. Cope well with stress is, in my opinion, find ways to find some level of calmness. So when you are in stressful situations, you may take yourself out of that situation, put on some soothing music, close your eyes, and find and bring yourself down, meditate a little bit. Some people cope with stress if they go for a run or a walk and they come back and they release some of that negative energy out there. So that's what it means by coping well with stress. Find a way, and you can find Google how to different ways to handle stress. You can certainly go ahead and find different ways to do that, and kind of de-stress yourself. Have a positive attitude, especially toward aging. Again, how do you have a positive attitude? So have a positive attitude means think about ways that, or think about things that make you happy, and think about, especially towards aging. Aging is difficult to think about. When you're younger, it's not, you feel like you can't die. So, but think about the different stages of your life. So don't look at when you're, oh, I'm doing, I'm 73 or 87. Look at your life in stages, and maybe beginning, middle, and end, right? And know that there's amazing things that you can do at those stages of your life. When in the beginning is when you're finding yourself, when you're maybe finding your significant other, when you're learning things, when you're making mistakes. Your middle part is maybe your real hard work, buckle down growth, and taking care of your family, driving your career up, taking chances on businesses, writing a book, getting a doctorate degree, whatever it might be. And then the latter half of your life is just enjoying the fruits of your labor, seeing your grandchildren, going on vacation, spending time with your spouse. There's amazing things at every stage of your life. And don't just think that after 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, 70 that, oh, my life's over. It's not. There's so much things that can be done and accomplished no matter how old you are. Socialize with a supportive network of friends and family. I talked about before. You want to find fulfillment in your life, fill it with experiences and relationships. Engage in complex social interactions at work, and be conscientious. I think that's what this says. Yeah. Work and family. Kalinsky parenting skills. So I thought this was interesting because if you're young, I think most of the folks are younger here. And I like this because it kind of talks about parenting skills. Now, what does parenting skills have to do with management? Everything. People say, I'm not a manager, or yeah, if you have kids, you are get the toughest management position in the world, actually. So some parenting skills, I think this is kind of more lighthearted than anything, but when you're a parent, these are some things to keep in mind to keep you focused and help you in the parenting arena. Make the child feel important and loved. And this is transferable to your employees, by the way. So think about the kids as your employees. Make the child feel important and loved. We do that with children, we do it with employees. Respond to the child's cues and clues. Same thing. Again, think about these in terms of, so I don't have to keep saying every single time. Think about these in terms of a child and also your employees. Accept the child for who they are, but expect success. Promote strong values, use constructive discipline, provide routines and rituals, be involved in child's education, and be there for the child. These are transferable to your employees. It's kind of funny how that is, but it really is. What matters, therefore, is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at any given moment. To put the question in general terms would be comparable to the question posed to a chess champion. Tell me, master, what is the best move in the world? There is simply no such thing as the best or even a good move apart from a particular situation in a game and a particular personality of one's opponent. That's a very good quote. And it also, it really, what comes to mind with this is like weight loss. You know, if you run today, it will do nothing for you. If you act nice to someone today, it does nothing for you. It does nothing for them. It's doing the same thing, being nice to people every day. It's running every day. It's eating healthy every day. And over time, you will see results, positive results. So just because you haven't lost a pound tomorrow does not mean you can't lose 10 in 30 days. And lastly? Not lastly. We can't casually adopt another person's strategy and expect it to work for us, any more than we can put their shoes on and expect to be comfortable. Indeed, we may find blisters instead of bliss if we aren't careful to equip ourselves properly. I tried, when my first companies, I tried to be like bigger companies, work on bigger organizations, try to be like some of these gurus, and it failed. So don't try to be like other people. Take some things that you like that kind of work with your style, but never try to mimic or mirror someone else. You will fail because you don't have their experiences, you don't have their talents, they don't have yours, and they don't have your drive or you don't have their drive. So there's a lot of different differences there that you want to make sure you're focusing on yourself and doing it your way. And lastly, Roethlisberger argues that people who are preoccupied with success ask the wrong question. They ask, what is the secret of success? When they should be asking, what prevents me from learning here and now? To be overly preoccupied with the future is to be inattentive toward the present, where learning and growth take place. To walk around asking, am I a success or a failure, is a silly question in the sense that the closest you can come to an answer is to say everyone is both a success and a failure. And I say this to my team with my company, is that success is not defined by a perfect outcome. Success is defined by if you learn something and if you're able to provide a great experience at the end of it. And you have to define your own success. But more importantly, you should be able to define what other people's successes are and how you can help them achieve that success. And that's what being a great manager is all about. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you sticking around if you have, and I hope you did. And if you have any questions, please let me know.